Good morning and thank you for joining me for this review of Oversea Under Stone by Louise Cooper. So this is a gorgeous little book and I thoroughly enjoyed reading it for the first time in I don't know how many years. Look at that great cover, isn't it beautiful? Such good artwork on it. Anyway, there's a lot to unpack with this book and the series it belongs to, but we're going to start with its author, Susan Cooper, who to my surprise not everyone has heard of. Is an English author. At least she was born in England. I believe she still lives in the US or in Canada today. She was born in 1935. She has written a huge number of books. She is primarily known for her children's books and for contemporary fantasy, as they like to call it, which I would debate. It's definitely fantasy, supernatural, mythological, but contemporary, I don't think that word belongs with these things. Anyhow, she's won any number of awards from England and America. And in 1965, she wrote Oversea Under Stone. I know I have heard some people say that she wrote this for a competition, an E. Nesbit competition. E. Nesbit, of course, being another famous British children's author who wrote The Railway Children. I'm not sure that that's true, but it's a nice little bit of trivia, true or not. So, since 65, this was published, and about 10 years later, at least in the 70s, so 1977 springs to mind for some reason I'm not sure about. She then wrote 4 follow-ups, turning it into a series of 5, which is generally known after the second title in the series, The Dark is Rising. Now, Oversea Under Stone is an incredibly rich book. It's an incredibly rich book. For those of us who grew up on English-style children's fiction, there was a few narratives in common. There was usually a group of children. They usually had adventures, very much on their own, rarely involving adults to any great extent. And Oversea Under Stone follows that litany. But where you go back to other ones like Enid Blyton, who I adored Enid Blyton when I was a small child. Castle of Adventure, The Sea of Adventure, The Famous Five, Faraway Tree when I was a bit younger, and others like her. Going back to it, I can't engage with it very well because the honest truth is that Enid Blyton wasn't a very good author. She didn't write well. Susan Cooper, on the other hand, writes spectacularly. It is visually distinct. The narrative is lovely. The actual reading experience of this is thoroughly adult friendly, as long as you're willing to have your three of your protagonists as children. But in every other way, this is a book that is timeless in terms of the way it's written and the mystery it describes to some extent. So, Susan Cooper, that's right. So she grew up in England. She spent some time living in a small village in Cornwall, after which the main village in this book is loosely based. And her parents moved to Wales at one stage, so she was deeply steeped in the mythology of Cornwall and Wales, which is a mythology that is Celtic, Bretonian, and I believe that the two areas, no expert here, have more in common when you start looking at their ancient myths than they do to their neighbours in more central England. I believe their original languages, both of which are surviving languages, are also more similar than to other languages in the area. Right, so Oversea Under Stone starts with the Drew family, mother, father, who don't appear very much, so I think they appear once or twice. The children, Simon, the eldest, Jane, the middle, and Barnabas, or Barney, the younger, are just arriving on holiday. They're getting off the train and preparing to meet their great-uncle, Mary. Their great-uncle Mary, we're told, is not actually their uncle. He was the great-uncle Mary of their mother, and they sort of inherited him, as you do in families. They are really excited to be in this village of Treswick, I think it's pronounced, and Great Uncle Mary has hired a house called the Grey House. It's a terrace house by the sea, and they're going to spend all summer there. So the children go off and they're having adventures, and Great Uncle Mary is mysteriously popping in and out, and their mother's a painter, so she vanishes for long periods of time. And it is all very of its era. Now, in that way, I feel that calling this book, at least, I'm not sure about the others, I haven't read them recently, contemporary, is a deep either misunderstanding or misleading for the reader. This was contemporary in 1965. So what you're looking at is something that's contemporary 70 years ago. That isn't contemporary, that is vintage. It also depicts a life that I suspect was idealized even in 65, but is thoroughly unrealistic today. Mother, father, 3 happy children, all a family together. Children are allowed to have their breakfast, run off into the great beyond, spend all day outside and sometimes all nights with no parental objections. The parents don't seem to know where their progeny are for 99% of their lives. This is not a contemporary scenario, and a lot of the plot in this book relies on the social architecture and situation of 1965. So there's one telephone in the house. None of this adventure could really happen. Its key elements depend on mobile phones being so thoroughly a science fiction of the future that no one's even made a TV show about them yet. So, vintage, not contemporary. The writing is also vintage, not contemporary. The mystery, thriller, and the characters likewise. But for all that, they are beautifully written, and I would thoroughly recommend it to someone who likes reading those all early stories like Joan Aiken, Alan Garner, some of Ursula Le Guin for that matter, Peter Dickinson, the Change trilogy. Those sorts of books that for a lot of children my age plus minus 10 years were probably the gateway into being adult readers of fantasy, supernatural, and science fiction. Simon, Jane, and Barney, meanwhile, are in this beautiful old grey house, and one day is a rainy day, so they decide to explore the house. Behind this huge wardrobe that they can only just shift, they find a tiny door, which they figured must be there because the corridor is shorter in the hallway than it is in the room. Climbing upstairs, they discover the trope of the amazing attic full of dust and mysterious objects, and in a corner they find a map. Old, crumbling, not written in English. Simon, who is just old enough to have had some Latin in school, managed to read some part of it, and they take this map away and they sort of hide it. They've decided not to tell any adults because they were told not to mess with anything that belonged to the owner of the house that they're renting, anything locked. So Barney and Jane argue that it wasn't locked, it was lying around the floor of the attic. Simon is pretty sure that the adults shouldn't know anything about it. They don't tell them. So they try to figure out what this map is. It's really old, it's crumbling, it's actually been glued to a larger vellum to keep it all together. And they hide it here and they hide it there. And a few mysterious things are happening in the Grey House meanwhile. There's this beautiful new yacht in the bay, Lady Mary, whose owner and sister have rather obviously cultivated the friendship of the Drew family, and the boys and the father have already gone out on that boat. Jane made up an excuse to not go because she didn't feel comfortable with Mr. Is it Harrison? No, not Harrison. Harrison's the other guy. The dude from the yacht, right? And furthermore, for us experienced readers of supernatural fantasy and fiction, the dog didn't like them at all. Always listen to the dog in these stories. His name's Rufus. I think he's an Irish setter. He's beautiful. Anyhow, they do eventually take Uncle Mary into their confidence. And a little bit more about Great Uncle Mary. When Barney was young, he couldn't say all that, so he called him Gummery. And they do alternatively call him that throughout the book and I believe the series. Gummery is a bit of a mysterious figure. He's old. He's been around for his mother's for their Drew children's mother's entire lifetime. No one really thinks about him on what he does. He will mysteriously vanish for months and then come having discovered some amazing document, artifact, accolade, He's a scholar, but we only learn that in increments because that isn't really how the Druid children think about them, so the author gets their perspective from the Druid children initially. Having discovered this map, eventually perplexed about a couple of things, they approach Great Uncle Mary, Gummery, with the information about the map. And he listens to them as no other adult would, thinks what they've got is sensible and interesting, and encourages them to pursue the course that they were already pursuing to try and discover where the site on the map is given. Simon, of course, wants to believe it's a treasure map. Barney is convinced it has something to do with King Arthur. Now, Barney, our youngest, is the more, I guess you'd say, left brain thinker. He's more artistic, he reads more books, he's fascinated by King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table stories. He's the one who knows that this part of the country was once called Logres. Logres? I might not be pronouncing that right. The United Kingdom, the British Isles of King Arthur's period. Now these are among the beautiful little details that Susan Cooper puts into this book. So you've got things like the details of the United Kingdom, of the Isles, of all the history that's gone before. You've got small bits that are unique to Cornwall, like a parade that happens later, inserted into it. And again, Cornwall and Wales, two both very interesting parts of the United Kingdom with history that is unique to themselves, and which Susan Cooper knew by knowing those two locales. Yes, I know Wales is a huge area and there's several different provinces, counties, princedoms, I don't know, to it, but, and I don't know which one she knew, but I know that both Cornwall and Wales have got their own mythology around King Arthur that is more Bretonian than the one, say, in France, which also has mythology of King Arthur, etc. I'll stop now before I sound too stupid. So Gummery lets the children know that he knows the person who originally wrote the original document. And that said, they come to understand that what this map is really about is it's offering them a quest to look for an item that was brought to this part of Cornwall by a fleeing and dying knight from King Arthur's court. And we're led to understand that it's probably the Grail. The children certainly think it's the Grail. And Gummery lets them know that he is part of this huge, long-lasting effort between the dark, as in the dark is rising, and the people who want to keep the dark back. He portrays it as this huge battle where some is always giving and some taking. One seems to win for a while but is always leveled out when something else occurs from the other side. He's very coy about it. He doesn't give us a lot of detail, so it is a mystery in that sense. And it is a thriller and a mystery in the sense that the children go pursuing this location of this item. And there's all sorts of small details like standing stones, a sea cave, exploration. Terror and the bad guys are pursuing them. So since the mother normally paints outdoors and you see her every now and then, and the father goes boating or fishing, or both just vanish, the children investigate the map, and Great Uncle Mary says that he can't really help them with this except in small things and to guard them. So after they learn to read the diagram, they learn to interpret some of the clues. There's a huge, big, exciting event at the end when they discover they have to go at low tide to the sea cave that is actually below the sea height. And the two boys go in. Yes, I know that's a trope. While Jane stays outside, they discover the Grail and extract it. And finally you end up with this huge fight as the two boats full of the bad guys are trying to catch them and they're trying to escape. During the fight, they manage to maintain... It's not a punch-up type fight. It's more of a battle flee. Much more organic and not violent so much as scary. So during this, the children manage to retain the Grail and pass it on to Great Uncle Mary, at which point it's safe. But the map and another map that they discovered inside the cave with the Grail are lost at sea. And the ending is the epilogue, when the children have presented the Grail to the British Museum and all the scholars are arguing over what it means and whether it is really Arthurian and what the carvings on it mean. So the cup we find has got 5 panels around it. 4 are artistic and 1 is writing which no one can decipher and which is thought to be a codex of some sort, and the children feel strongly that the code that they found in the cave and lost at sea would probably have given them the cipher to read that panel. But all is not lost. It was found in a sealed lead canister. It would have dropped to the bottom of the sea. It is somewhere still out there, and Gumeri says, do not despair, sort of thing. It may yet one day be found. So it's a great little adventure book. And like I said, I think most adults who are capable of reading children's books will enjoy it thoroughly for what it is. It is childish in some ways. Some of the problems that children get themselves into are quite clearly problems that children would get themselves into, adults wouldn't. There's a few situations that they get them into. Adults could walk away from that, most adults perfectly capably. And a few of the complications come from the fact that they're relying on an adult who is diverted by the enemy to go elsewhere and sometimes has missions of his own. However, all that said, this is for me a 5 out of 5 read. I am so glad I finally managed to find this book again. It took me a couple of years. So The Dark is Rising, I've read all of them. I think all of them, maybe all but one in the past, but I didn't hang on to them. I had that fallacy of, oh, I've got too many books, I'm moving, I've got to get rid of some books, they're too heavy, blah, blah, blah. Worst decision you can make. Don't ever make that the decision about books if you love your books. And I thought I could get them again. Now, it's true that this series are regularly being reprinted, but it's for the best part of 2 years I've been trying to find a copy of Oversea Under Stone in the Wild with a complete and utter lack of success. So I was delighted in the recent haul when I was given 3 boxes of books, mostly children's books, in which this very good copy Puffin edition is. So now let's talk about the books. This, of course, isn't from 1965. This was a reprint from the 80s, I'm pretty sure. Let's have a look. Yes, 85. So it's a fair bit older. That beautiful cover is done by Michael Heslop. Michael Heslop did these wonderful magic artistic covers for all of the series. And the other two, and I've also got Silver on the Tree, which I think is the 5th in the series, also by Michael Heslop, a bit faded, but I've had that one for a long time. And Greenwich, which I'm pretty sure is the 3rd in the series, again, one of those beautiful magical covers that just breathe magic, supernatural and adventure into the soul of the reader. This one's the smallest of the books. It's odd that I could never find the first one because they are obviously being reprinted regularly. No offense, Les Edwards, but honestly, this cover, which is also a Puffin, I find it incredibly ugly. I would even have bought one of these covers to have the complete series, but luckily I only had to do that once. The other thing about this particular edition, unlike the 80s edition, is that you don't have the really nice illustrations by Marjorie Gill. Perhaps the later editions thought they were too difficult or too childish, I don't know. But Marjorie Gill is an illustrator who I think primarily did children's books, and she does these amazing black and white line drawings. I looked her up a few years ago when I was researching artists who worked with books, and I was blown away by how much she'd done. She also illustrated some of the Frances Hodge books. I'm pretty sure she did the Narnias, at least the set of Narnias that I possess. And some of her work is so magnificently beautiful that it could hang on the wall without any hint of the book around it. In this book, for example, 2 of the 3 children are climbing to see the standing stones at the top of Khmer Head. And yeah, just gorgeous, gorgeous illustrations, which 3 of my 4 books have. Chirp, chirp. And herein lies the problem. I was pretty sure when I got this one that I now had all 5 and could read them in sequence. It turns out that I was wrong and I'm missing the Grey King. So I've got this one, I've got the second one, I've got Greenwich, the third, then I've got a skip between the 4th and the 5th, and I'm going to have to go out and actively search for the Grey King if I want to complete this series more or less at one sitting, which had been my aim, my goal, and why I was so extremely excited to find Undersea Over Stone. Since Undersea Over Stone was written about a decade maybe before the other ones, it is very, very suitable for standalone. And it is more of a mystery children's adventure than the next books, all of which I believe contain more of the supernatural aspect of good against evil. However, I'm looking forward to finding out because I'm about to start The Dark is Rising. I'll take this series as far as I can. Thank you very much for watching. If you are still watching and you are one of the many new subscribers I have, yay! I'm so excited to have subscribers. It is great to see that so many people are interested in books and interested in my take on those books. That is absolutely wonderful. So thank you to everyone who subscribes. Thank you to everyone from the depths of my heart who comments about the books that I'm reviewing. These are all books that I've read almost always just before I review them, unless I otherwise stated. I love books. I want more people to love books. I want more people to read. And so thank you for watching. Go away, read good books.